Welcome, everybody, to the FIDE Corporate Chess Championship. I'm Grandmaster Robert Hess. Alongside me, my friend, National Master Sam Copeland. Sam, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling really, really good. I'm looking forward to this. This is an exciting format. We were just talking about how much we've enjoyed playing in the U.S. Amateur Team East, and this is like that times 1,000 in numerous different ways. So I think this will be an amazing event with amazing players like Magnus Carlsen, Anish Giri, Jan Nepomniachtchi, so many great players alongside, all kinds of great amateur players around the world who are making great contributions to companies and to the world.
Yeah, putting a new definition of work from home because, of course, with the worldwide pandemic, we're already working from home, but now you're doing chess. So is that work? Is it fun? Unclear what each company has in store for us. But let's remind everybody of the format to let them know what we're about to see here. There is the first stage, which is the pool stage, which we're in now, and teams will qualify for the playoff. And each team has 4 players, at least one male, at least one female, and they can have reserves if they want. The 10-minute plus 2-second increment time control. It's this nice kind of rapid time control where you hopefully will not lose on time, but for some of our participants who may not be so experienced in online play, that could still be very quick paced. And as is standard, 1 point for a win, half a point for a draw, no points for a loss. So Sam, as we move into the start of this tournament, the pool stage here, we have so many different pools, Swiss pairing system. How do you make of this as, thinking about putting this all together?
Well, it's really, really going to be incredibly challenging. There are so many teams participating. I think 93 teams per pool. And it's a 6-round Swiss system here. So you only have 6 rounds to get into the finals on Sunday. And to do that, you're going to need probably a perfect score, 6 points out of 6 points in your matches, or at least 5.5 out of 6, and some very, very lucky tie breaks. So this is going to be extremely competitive. We've got these star players, but it's really going to come down to the depth on the team in almost every case.
For sure. It's a winner stay home type of dynamic. And Magnus Carlsen is playing in this event. That's in the buzz around the chess world. He is on the Kindred team, and of course, matched by his, let's just call him Twitter competitor, Anish Giri for Optiver. They have a rich chess history. They really love chess. They've been working together for a long time. Anish has helped train the team, he told me, for this competition. So maybe some of those ratings of his teammates who are full-time employees there will be misleading because they have that Giri method under their wings.
Absolutely. Maybe we've got some like Benji Fishy Nico situations here where Anish Giri's really been driving up the skill level of his players in some close sessions here, training sessions. It's going to be really, really interesting to watch these players kind of represent these companies that they've been associated with for a very long time.
Absolutely. And we do have some welcoming words from the FIDE president, Arkady Dvorkovich. Let's hear what Arkady had to say.
Dear participants of the first FIDE World Online Corporate Championship, we are really happy that more than 1,500 participants gathered today to compete for the first place, but more importantly, to show the love for chess, to enjoy playing chess, and to collect best memories from this championship. We have been surprised by the number of applications for this championship as it never happened before. And we have 280 teams competing with more than 100 grandmasters, men and women, participating in the tournament. It's a great combination of skills, talents, and real joy for our great game. We are also happy that companies were trying their best to collect the best players working around their ecosystems, and we will have more and more partners in the future, more and more people involved in playing chess and organizing chess and partnering chess. One of our initiatives that we got support for from you, from the companies participating, is donations for our social projects, including educational chess, social chess, and supporting our chess veterans. Thanks a lot. We are very grateful for your enormous support. Good luck at the tournament, and I wish you good health. We are also thankful to our key partners in this tournament, Chess.com, for organizing the event and providing best possible conditions for all players, all teams. And finally, good luck at the tournament, and I wish you good health.
You heard from the FIDE president, this event, many corporations taking part and also giving back. And here are some of the causes that money is being raised for. There's the Chess for People with Disabilities, the FIDE Chess Veterans Support, and Chess in Education. So it's a really great initiative. Sam, the winning team, it's going to be declared the online champion, but also the team that raises the most money for charity throughout the competition is invited to the World Championship match at the end of 2021. Accommodation expenses covered for 3 nights, and VIP tickets provided to attend 3 rounds of the match. That'll be pretty exciting for the team that's able to give the most back. They'll also receive that invitation to the World Championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is one of the initiatives that, is kind of behind the scenes for many who watch FIDE events, watch the FIDE World Chess Championship, see all that they do with ratings, players, and managing titles and all that. But a lot of what FIDE does is really connecting with great causes to help promote chess around the world, and companies who are able to really provide that support, help with fundraising, help with sponsorship. And a lot of the companies that are participating in this event have been sponsors of major chess events through FIDE in the past. So this is fantastic to see, and it's a great initiative to be kind of bringing together with this event, along with some great chess players, everything coming together in a really, really nice way.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And it is great that they are raising funds for these initiatives. And it's a friendly competition, but we know that with friendly competition, you can take out the friendly sometimes. There is some serious competition about to go down, and there may be rivalries between corporations. There may just be friendly rivalries between chess players. It's a nice mix. And Anish Giri and Magnus Carlsen, well, if there's rivalry, they'll be there for it.
Absolutely. And as you say, it's a friendly competition. I often find that team formats, the Olympiad, US Amateur Team East, so many other team events are both the friendliest and most fun to play in. And they are also the ones where you're most invested, right? Because in a normal tournament, if you draw or you mess up and you lose, it's okay. It's on you, you move on. But when your team is depending on your result, it really feels like the stakes just go absolutely through the roof. And I know that a lot of players here are really going to feel that pressure as they need that extra half point, that extra full point to help their team get through to the finals on Sunday.
I do believe that's something that can be overlooked. And as somebody who has competed in so many team events, it's stressful, honestly, where you're playing your board, but you also have to play the match situation. You're looking at board 3, the match is tied 1-1. It's your board and the third board left. And you're looking there, is my teammate winning? Or are they doing okay? And the next thing you know, your teammate's in trouble. So you have to change your mindset and then play for a win just to even the matchup. There's a lot to juggle in these situations, Sam. So I think that could be a difficult thing to take under control for players who are used to just playing casual individual games.
Absolutely. And normally when you're playing classical, let's say that rapid is now normal, but traditionally when you're playing a classical tournament, you have some time to process what's going on in your teammates' games. And it matters a lot. Maybe not so much today. Tomorrow will matter a lot more in those final rounds as we're seeing who's going to get into the actual finals on Sunday, right? But in a 10-2 time control, you really aren't going to have a lot of time to make assessments about your teammates' boards. And that does matter in this team format. It's going to be very tense, very exciting, and we're really looking forward to all of it.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And it's mainly going to be fun. We don't want to put too much pressure on any individual player, though some teams, I'm sure, have been preparing a lot. I know in New York City, there is a corporate chess league, and those teams meet once a week. And actually, we'll get probably to that conversation later in the day when some of those teams play. But I know that it's a very fun environment, but teams do have a lot of chess training. So I think that ratings can be misleading in an event of this magnitude because they're full-time employees. They don't have time to play in all these tournaments, but they may be taking lessons or working with one another on their chess.
Absolutely. And looking through the list of players, there's so many players that I was just excited to see at this event. Players like Joel Lautier, who is one of the best players, in the past few decades, was a top player from France, was really the top player maybe before Etienne Bacrot and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave in France. And he went in a corporate career and has a great job now for the company he's going to be representing here. He's been working for a long time in the financial world. And, he hasn't been playing chess in, I don't know, 20 years at this point. It's exciting to see him in this event, competing with his coworkers and colleagues. And I think too, we have Magnus and Anish. We're going to focus a lot on their games. That's really exciting. But we also have companies in here who have players who are an average rating of like 1,500, where these are players who know each other. They play during their lunch break. And, this is a big part of their day-to-day life, along with the work that they're doing together. And I think that's really, really cool.
It certainly is. And I do love that dynamic. It's a building experience. It's like they have these team building exercises, chemistry exercise, right? When you start working together, chess can be a unifying force in that way. So I think that it's a great staple of the office. Some of these teams do take it very seriously. A lot of them just casual players. That's great. And there are many good teams out there, not just the Magnus Carlsen and Anish Giris of the world, but players who have loved the game for a long time and just may not be able to play because their profession takes them away. But speaking of Anish, I did speak to him before the event quite extensively, and it is great to see that the collaboration with Optiver is a long time thing. He told me actually that before he was involved, they've had a long chess history that included the likes of Jan Smeets, and from Optiver, they go to Tata Steel every single year not this year, of course, because of the pandemic, but they've been spectators of that event. So their company really does love and has a long tradition with chess.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of companies like that here who've been sponsoring players or who run events, like Grinka, who's going to be a favorite in this event. I think has a very good chance to make it to the finals. Tata is also represented. Major companies who also have really invested in chess and supported chess a lot over many, many years. And I think that's fantastic as well. You mentioned Anish Giri. Optiver's first pairing in this event is Akshay Alpa. I think I'm missing the pronunciation a little bit. I apologize, but they've been sponsoring Nihal Sarin for a long time. One of the best young talents coming out of India, a player who I'm really excited to see, in the next few years, especially as we get back to over the board chess. His rating was skyrocketing, and then we lost a lot of over the board chess. And this is a player who feels like he might be 2,700 plus at this point, and his rating may just not really be reflecting it because he hasn't had rated tournaments. And I think Anish tweeted that he's anticipating playing Nihal Sarin in the first round today. Not an easy pairing at all. In fact, the pairings only come out 10 minutes before the games. So we don't know that Nihal Sarin's actually in the lineup yet, but it certainly seems likely.
Now, what a funny experience for these high-level chess players. Okay, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I'm taking part in this FIDE online, corporate world chess championship. It should be pretty good. I'm going to play players from other companies. And then guess what? Your first round pairing is Nihal Sarin. Good luck to you. That's no rest for any player in this field, including Magnus Carlsen. There are so many strong players out there, underrated players, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But that is a heavyweight matchup in the first round.
Absolutely. It's really incredible how many players are playing in this event total, and then how many top players are also playing in this event. When I think the initial lineups came out, I think many were shocked to see, Magnus Carlsen, Anish Giri, all of these players there. I know that David Yada, who's the press officer for FIDE, was on Twitter, and people were, buzzing about Magnus Carlsen playing in this event. And he was commenting, he may not organize events that often, but when he does, he tries to bring world champions. And this is certainly a huge success for him, huge success for FIDE, really a tremendous achievement, and exciting to see all of the players and companies that are represented in this whole event. I think we're going to get a cut in on some of these players in just a second.
For sure. And for everybody wondering about the round start time, just know that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players all calling into the fair play calls. There are arbiters all around the world taking part in this, making sure that the integrity of the event is upheld. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. The rounds will start shortly. We do appreciate your patience, and it's just it goes to show with just what a team effort this is from FIDE, from Chess.com, from many arbiters around the world who are helping out, and there's a lot of tech that needs to be taken care of. So we do appreciate everyone's effort here.
Absolutely. I think that as chess players who've played tournaments, who've played team tournaments before, there's no tournament that I see, maybe other than like the elementary championships, that impress me more on an organizational level than the team tournaments, right? You see the Olympiad, you see the Pro Chess League, which we've been directly involved in the complexity of that. You see your U.S. Amateur Team East, so many players, so many games. Often you're dealing with substitutions for players, as you do have reserves that you can call in, and that affects a lot of things. The tie breaks get crazy complicated, and teams need to understand that. That because you've been a captain of the U.S. Women's Olympiad team, and in this case, that's ramped up because everything is online, so you don't have the players in the building where you may be able to more easily address some things, and the time control is 10-2. So just a huge shout out to all of the arbiters and organizers involved. I know that there are some people who've been tearing their hair out. Literally, I know David Yada doesn't have any left to make this event happen.
Yeah, well, it is really a team effort, and we do appreciate everyone's input, their work. It's phenomenal that an event of this magnitude is taking place. And we are going to take a short break just to get everything set. Wait for the start of the round. We will be back very shortly when the rounds will begin and the FIDE Corporate Chess Championship will begin. are back getting set for the FIDE Corporate Championship to get underway here. Sam, we know from behind the scenes, these Zoom calls, there are many of them, and there are so many people in each room.
Right. We are really stretching the limits of Zoom to its full capacity. We're going to show one of the breakout rooms right now. This is, again, only one of the breakout rooms. There are so many players participating in this event. Of course, we've got them all on camera because of fair play concerns. And, just because we also want to be able to show some of these players in the broadcast and show their teams in the broadcast. So I'm not actually sure which pool this is at the moment, but this is just one of the breakout rooms right here with so many players setting up for their games, getting ready to start. I heard that we are still waiting on a fair number of players, which is why some of the games, most of the games, all of the games, I think, actually haven't started, but we are getting them all in and addressing everybody. I think you commented while we were on break that as organizers, and I think we've both organized events, there's never a first round that really starts on time. And that's true right now. And that's just an expectation when you go in, especially with a unique format like this. We have literally the best arbiters in the world helping make this happen, but it's a first round. The players have all of the information about how to get in, how to get set up and such. But when you have thousands of players, there's going to be some confusion. There are people who are struggling with internet or just they've never used Zoom before, right? That happens in some cases. And so there's a lot to be sorted, and, it's all coming together, but it's taking maybe a few more minutes.
For sure. And the priority is definitely making sure that everyone has a good time and everyone has a fair time. And if somebody, can't get in to the Zoom link for some reason, or if there's an outage in some area, you don't want to see a team forfeited. And because they have spaced out the rounds, the rounds don't start one on top of the other, that leaves some wiggle room. And I think it's good that everyone is able to participate and play in the opening round. But of course, I know there are a lot of eager fans out there saying, wait, my company's playing. I want to root on my teammates, my coworkers and others who just have a favorite player who may be playing. Of course, we've mentioned Magnus Carlsen, Giri, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Vyacheslav Artemiev, some of the who's who of the chess world taking part. So it's a nice balance of these teams from different companies as well as top players. So I'm sure there are a lot of people rooting. Let us know in the chat, honestly. Let us know who you're rooting for. If you're part of a company, it's great to engage with you all.
Absolutely. There are so many players and teams in this event. We're not going to be able to focus on all of them, but we would really love to know which players and teams you would like us to focus on. There are so many players and teams as well. I think that maybe aren't teams that people are familiar with that are actually likely to be favorites because they just have a lot of depth. There's a lot of great chess players who also have great careers at these companies, and you may not hear their name very often because they've got this career that's really been a fantastic focus, and they're not as active as they were 5 years, 10 years ago, something like that. Who are some of the teams that are kind of standing out to you that might be missed early on, but really have a lot of depth and could really go the distance here?
Well, you and I were actually talking off stream just during our break, and I was saying that PayPal Bulgaria, they have a great team featuring Sergey Ehrenberg, Grandmaster, on board one. And then on board two, they have Antonetta Stefanova, the former women's world champion. So they have a very top-heavy team, but then you look down their roster, and even their board four is rated 2130 FIDE. And we were talking about some of these ratings can be misleading. Sometimes people are rusty, so they'll be overrated, right? It's a former rating, and they can't quite live up to that standard, or they're underrated because they still practice, they still train, and they just don't play in tournaments to get that rating higher. So that team looks very dangerous. And I would also say the team from Granke, as you mentioned, with Georg Meyer on the top board, and I believe they brought in Alina Kashlinskaya on board too, and the rest of the way they have a very strong lineup. So I mean, what about you, Sam? Do you agree with those two teams, or have more caught your eye as well?
100%. Of course, these teams are fantastic. I mean, the Grinka team is very similar in lineup to the team that that Germany put together in the Pro Chess League. They've got Georg Meyer in there. They've got Hanna-Marie Kleck. They've got Ina Agrest, and that team did really well. the Snowballs went to the finals in the Pro Chess League. So they're very familiar with this format, this time control. And they are going to be definitely, one of the toughest teams to beat, a top seed and an experienced seed. And I definitely am looking forward to watching them throughout this whole event. Absolutely. You mentioned PayPal Bulgaria. Morgan Stanley from Hungary has Levan Bergadze, an international master. Two more international masters that are on board, 3 and 4, Robert Torma and, I'm not going to get the pronunciation correct here, Ryosuke Nanjo. And then women's grandmaster Petra Pop, who I'm going to guess is related to Gabor Pop, who's I think been the coach of the Hungarian national team. So I don't know if he's involved in the coaching there, but that's another team that has just a lot of depth, is definitely going to be very strong. Wasko from Poland has Wojtacek on board 1, a huge player. And again, they have a lot of depth there. Another international master on that board. There are just so many players in this event that are, very, very strong players, FIDE masters, international masters, grandmasters who you might not be familiar with because they're super talented, but they discovered that it's possible to make a lot more money in an excellent corporate career than as a grandmaster in many, many cases. We should also just mention Optiver with Anish Giri. We've been mentioning Anish Giri. Obviously, he's incredible, one of the top seeds in this event, but we've been talking about how much depth matters. Optiver has also got FIDE master Javier Alcaraz on board 2, and David Pardo-Simon, an international master, here on board 3. Those orders might be incorrect. I think some of the chess results orders might not actually be the accurate board orders. I'm not 100% sure. And they have a 1,000 rated player, Lucrezia Minoncello, on board 4. I have a feeling, as strong as this team is, that this 1,000 rating is actually just, a filler number, that this player may not have played rated chess before, but I have a feeling that he's going to be much, much better than 1,000. And Optiver could really be a contender, if they have Anish, an international master, a FIDE master here, and a 1,000, where I'm just not going to buy that Lucrezia is actually 1,000. If Anish picks you for his team, then I have a feeling that you might have some skills.
Or it's the person who has a lot of pressure on them, but the games are off. And speaking of 1,000 rated players, one 1,000 rated player we have here, Maksat Durdaev, is playing against Vladislav Artemiev. Can you imagine? You are coming into this corporate championship. You're saying, hey, I'm competing, world championship at stake, and my first round opponent is none other than Vladislav Artemiev, one of the absolute best players in the world. We've seen him take down huge names in the Speed Chess Championship, among other events, and now with the white pieces. And look, you see that evaluation bar? Slightly better for white. If you're a coworker of this player here, take a photo and say you were better after 9 moves, slightly, against one of the top players in the world, Vladislav Artemiev.
Absolutely. I think that someone posted on Twitter when they saw Magnus Carlsen's first round pairing, and we'll look at that game as that game gets started later, where he's playing a 1,400 opponent. An interesting question for this opponent, and this opponent right here with Maksat playing against Vladislav Artemiev, is, do you consider yourself, the luckiest player in the event? You're playing one of the best chess players in the world. This is such a rare opportunity. Or are you thinking, oh man, this is so unlucky? I personally think that you have to be thinking, I'm so lucky. I'm playing one of the best players in the event. My team is probably not going to make the finals, but I'm here to have a really good time to represent my company. And I get to do that against an amazing player who I admire and respect.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience for many of them, because a player like Artemiev or Giri or Magnus, we're talking about them, you don't get an opportunity to play them unless it's in a simul. But in a one-on-one game, this is a rare opportunity, and I don't think that they'll take it for granted. And we'll talk about this game briefly here. Artemiev just played the move A5, so he's taking space over on the queen side, and he has this wonderful bishop on G7 slicing across the board. And for Durdaev here, he hasn't finished his development. And because black has this bishop on G7, white can't push D4 very easily. And if you play C3, you try to take over the center with D4, not so fast, because black is first to play the move like B4. But look at him. He strikes.
I like A4.
Yeah, me too. But then B4 is played. And I think, Sam, you also really love that bishop on G7.
I really do love that bishop on G7. I wish the rook wasn't on A1 so I could play B3. It wouldn't solve all the issues, but it would help. It would help to be able to lock up a bit of a light square blockade. I think that a lot of players are often frustrated with these kind of setups here. This isn't exactly, I guess it's a closed Sicilian here. A lot of amateur players like setups like white is going for here. Usually, I think the F pawn is going to be on F4, which will help with some counterplay. But I think seeing how Artemiev is approaching this position is really instructive, very natural play. And this is the kind of play that many players could plug in when they're facing a similar system for white. Also, since he's not being impatient, he's not trying to like run over his opponent. He's a much more experienced player. He knows that his chances are going to come, and he's just putting his pieces on good squares, taking space where he can, and he knows that eventually the game will turn.
Absolutely. And this knight came to h2. I expected to come to g4, which to some of our viewers may seem very threatening. That knight's coming to the king side, maybe into a square like h6. But Artemiev is fully developed. He has a connectivity between all the pieces here, no weaknesses to speak of. And a move like rook b1, hey, Sam, your idea with b3 is coming soon. That would also protect that pawn on a4. The queen is eyeing that. Although Artemiev, he can play in the center. He can push his pawn to d5 to take up space. He can play pawn f5, which is a move you don't want to play unless you're sure and confident in that, because it opens up your king a bit. But look, rook e8, rook f8, I do expect a pawn push to f5. So
I was really liking f5. Yeah. Absolutely. I play the Dutch defense. So if I play as questionable an f5 move as is the Dutch defense, I'm definitely going to be looking to play f5 in this position. Create more pressure here with that bishop on b7, which doesn't look like it's doing a lot right now. But when you push that f pawn, it's really going to start to count. And I love that he's put his rooks in place before he's pushed the pawns. That's not always going to be kind of the right strategy, but I just have a penchant for that kind of buildup, setting up, and then you just start to crash through. And that's what he's doing right now. And it's very, very powerful. You see that even though no pieces have been exchanged, white hasn't made any, material errors at this point, the computer's already really liking black. And that's just an indication of the great class of player that Artemiev is and the way that he's mobilizing his full pieces here.
And he played h6 to not allow the queen to d2 to line up with the bishop on the diagonal. Instead, we see a capture in e7. Now black has the bishop pair. Watch out. There's already a direct threat. Easy to miss that because that knight on c6 simply recaptured a piece. But now it's easy to overlook. Wait, let's out of the corner of my eye, there's a pawn there that needs to be taken care of. So b3 probably should be played, but now this bishop is even stronger. It doesn't have a counterpart. So I think Artemiev, well, he can now just take this pawn. Unfortunately, Durdaev, who's been playing a good game, all of these moves have been quite principled in nature. Now it's going to be a material deficit, not just a positional one. So I think that Artemiev.
Do you take that pawn though? Or do you kind of push forward and stay focused in the middle of the board? I agree in principle that taking the pawn is an excellent decision and you have the pawn in pocket. I don't know. I've never wanted to play very greedily. I guess he's going to do it. You're of course right.
Yeah. Well, I think you're also correct to say that maybe there was something to play in the center. Black could have played the move h5 to kick this knight out first if that knight looks scary. But Artemiev, he calculates. He says it's free. Let me take it. And also, it's nice to see that Artemiev isn't just playing every move as a pre-move, not playing bullet chess here, playing a serious game, giving his opponent respect. And that's the sign of a true professional, where you play the board, the position, not the rating of your opponent. He might not even know the rating, honestly. He might have just said, all right, I'm playing for my team. Let's do this. So Artemiev steals a pawn, moves his queen back. And I think we should move on to the game between Anish Giri and Nihal Sarin here, because that's a really heavyweight matchup. And it's round one, no rest for either player. And you see the ratings next to the name, Nihal Sarin, 25.93. I think we can agree a little underrated, huh?
Tata Steel just finished, and we saw Jordan Van Foreest win that event. Of course, we know Jordan's a great player, but that surprised a lot of people. You were commentating that event, so you got to see all of that firsthand. We also saw Alireza Firouzja, Andrei Esipenko have a great result in that event. And one of the things that I kind of took away watching Tata Steel was we haven't had any chance for most of these super talented players to really play rated chess. They're so young, they're so talented. We see Nihal Sarin's rating here of 25.93. How accurate is that? if he had a full slate of FIDE rated games in 2020, early 2021, would he maybe be upper 2600s? Would he maybe be already possibly over 2700? We've seen peers of his like Ali Reza Farouja make that break. And he's really impressed in some online settings in 2020, 2021. The Junior Speed Chess Championship is definitely one of the biggest ones where he was, playing absolutely amazing, crushing chess in a lot of situations. And he's just going to be very, very tough as an opponent here for Anish Giri. The computer's saying it's dead equal, but this is such an imbalanced position with White having this extended, somewhat fractured pawn structure, but some initiative and activity in return. I think a draw is actually not that likely here at this point. In a rapid game, we can definitely see a lot of things happen from this point.
And I'm sure the spectators are thrilled to hear that because they don't like draws. And what Sam is saying is that this queen on f4, this king on g7, right? That looks like a potential attack in the making for White. But Anish's claim is, look at your c3 pawn, look at your a2 pawn. Those are split. Pawn's best friend being another pawn. They feel better protected that way. And Anish is just doing very fundamentally sound chess. This bishop can go to the longest diagonal on the board, bishop to b7. Or it can come to a6 if you need a tempo, and this rook is under attack on f1. So you have a choice of where to put the bishop. The rooks will likely side 1 to c8, 1 to d8. And I guess, Sam, is this going to be enough for Nihal Sarin? Because he wants to play the move h5. He played h4. But how are you going to line this queen and this bishop up for a checkmating attack?
I think the whole point of h5, of course, is to soften this light square diagonal, but it really seems like Black has total control over that diagonal. That knight on c5 looks amazing. And yes, the bishop is coming to b7. You can't set up a queen e4 battery if you manage to push h5, which seems like it's going to be met fairly comfortably by g5. Whose position would you prefer here? I feel like this is a bit of a litmus test. I see the computer saying it's really close to balanced. I would pick Black in a heartbeat. That may be just my stylistic preference. I don't know what yours is.
Well, based on the time consumption, where Anish Giri is down on the clock, he has less than 5 minutes. This could get sharper. I will say that he seems worried. I would also take Black's position. I like the long-term benefits of the position, but I'm just trying to think, is h4, is that point to play h5? Or maybe there could be this sneaky knight reroute, knight h2, knight g4, because there's a soft square on f6 that is under White's control. So you have to be careful about things like that. And I admit that when I first looked, I thought that Black's position looked excellent. Of course, I can see the evaluation, but not the moves. And it says about level. And if that's the case about level, that it's clear that White has some attacking chances. Otherwise, I think the position, or the evaluation, I should say, would favor Black.
And this knight h2, knight g4 idea is, of course, really creative and interesting. On the other hand, if you do knight h2, knight g4, you would drop the pawn on h4 in this particular moment, like if you were able to get those two moves in a row. And to make that pawn secure, you might need to play g3, but that weakens the light squares so much. Do you really want to do that? That seems like a very committal decision.
Yeah, I won't say that I would like to do that. Maybe if I'm trying to attack, I will have to. And bishop a6 played by Nish, and that tells me that he feels the need to develop very quickly. Instead of playing bishop b7 on a great diagonal, we've been talking about that, he says, let me gain a tempo. And that means he gains a move to figure out his plan here, because the rook is under attack, and that rook is more valuable than the bishop. That rook should slide out the way, and then Anish can put a rook on the d8 square. So Sam,
and something on d3 potentially. I would love to sink the bishop or knight into d3. I really am eyeing that square, thinking of great games like Grunfeld versus Alyekin and other games where a knight is sunk into d3. Of course, Karpov versus Kasparov, game 16, 1985. This is a bit of a different structure, but these games have really made me, cherish any opportunity to stick a powerful piece into a big square like d3. And again, the computer's saying that there's, good play for White. And if I were evaluating this and I could not see the computer evaluation, I would definitely be telling like a student that this is slight advantage, clear advantage for Black.
Yeah, I am completely with you. And we do see that evaluation. So it says slightly better for White. So I'm guessing that some kind of like rook d1, rook d4, try to take over the open file. That's also something we would tell our students, right? There's an open file. That's the fully open one. And he plays rook e1, and the evaluation stays about the same. So Sam, I was going to ask you this. one of the important
Is the
questions.
evaluation bar stuck? I'm wondering that.
That's not the question I was going to ask you, but that is possible
Okay.
where it's not on a high depth. But sometimes you need to figure out what pieces should be traded. And Anish uses your idea of bishop d3 because if the knight recaptures, that would be a fork on the queen, the rook. But what pieces does white need for a potential attack? And for black, what pieces would you like to see traded to feel more confident in your position?
I guess I would like to see all the pieces traded if I'm black and I just win the end game based on structure. For white, I think you want all the pieces on the board, which is what we're seeing with bishop to b3. And of course, black doesn't want to take on b3 and fix the pawn structure there for white. Then white would actually be probably just much, much better. And of course, Anish is never going to take on b3 unless there's a specific tactical reason that he can make that work. Some gain he's getting in this position. I think if I could trade all the minor pieces and leave white with the structure that he has, I would feel really good about the heavy piece endgame. I would love to get that heavy piece endgame because the rooks and the queen are so good at pressuring like the isolated pawn on c3 that probably if you trade all of the minor pieces, I'm starting to think that this could be like almost a technical win for black. That might be optimistic on my part, but I've always had a real penchant for pressuring these positions with the heavy pieces. And by penchant, I mean affection, not skill. I screw it up all the time, but I really like trying to pressure with the heavy pieces in these kinds of end games.
Well, Optiver might be a little bit nervous right now that bar went up to over +1 for white despite the even material. And I really like the last couple moves that Nihal has played. And if we actually go back, I just want to show a quick tactical sequence that was possible is that knight takes b3, pawn takes b3, that knight hits the rook in the corner, you have to take back, and it looks like you steal a pawn with rook takes c3, but you'll notice that this bishop on d3 is under attack once, only defended once, and a move like queen to d4 hits this rook on c3 while hitting this bishop on d3 a second time, and that would win white that bishop on the spot.
Very instructive moment and great play from Nihal Sarin as he's making a move that he wants to play. Rook e3, lifting that rook. It's not immediately clear how that rook might be involved in the attack, but it's much better positioned to create some very serious threats on e3 than it was on e1. So he improved his position. He also asked some serious questions of Anish Giri in terms of his setup and what he was trying to do with bishop d3. And, he managed to defend an attacked pawn with these tactics. Very, very instructive play, very impressive play from Nihal Sarin. And it is starting to feel more and more dangerous from Anish. Anish's perspective, both players down to 2.5 minutes or thereabouts, under 3 minutes. I think one thing that's going to be interesting to see in this event is how the players manage their time. This 10-2 time control is really popular for a lot of amateurs. In fact, a lot of amateurs, the most popular time control on Chess.com is 10 minutes flat. That shocks a lot of people. Grandmasters, stronger players often pick 3-minute, 5-minute, or bullet. But the most popular time control on Chess.com is 10 minutes flat. So for amateur players, this is a very natural time control. For professional players, I think it's often a very difficult time control to play. And you see them kind of consuming a lot of time early in the game, trying to get that advantage.
Wow, look at that turn of events here. I mean, the bar dropped, and that was a huge drop. And the reason why was because of Anish's wonderful move, queen g5. I mean, look at this. Just to go back very quickly, h5 goes for the attack, and Anish says, I don't want to play g5. My king is unsafe. Let me play queen g5, your e5 pawn, your c3 pawns. Those are things I'm going to target. And we saw the trade of queens, and now we've seen a trade of another pair of pawns. So and look at that final move of the sequence, bishop c4, defending the e6 pawn, attacking the a2 pawn, and this pawn f7 isn't going anywhere, and Anish knows that, so he can capture that next move. So improving a piece rather than recapturing for the sake of recapturing. I like the way Anish is playing it, but now let me ask you, Sam, we've talked about these bad pawns or potentially weak pawns on the queen side for white. Black's kingside pawns are a bit split too now.
I don't feel as concerned about Black's kingside pawns, though, because the king is near them, for one thing. It feels like those can be very comfortably defended. They're also not on files where White's rook can attack them very easily. I mean, you can try and bring some pressure against e6, but it's challenging. Bishop b3 feels good, and it seems like the computer's saying, all right, this is likely to kind of liquidate out to a balanced position. Of course, right now it's still very, very complicated. I noticed we have Anish on camera. He definitely seemed like he was under pressure. And then as soon as H5 happened, he immediately played Queen G5. And my sense from his body language was he had really been hoping for that move, that he felt like he was under pressure, and he, kind of banged out the moves up through bishop c4. He had seen all of this and had been feeling much more comfortable about this notion of h5 as soon as he got queen g5 in. And I think Anish is feeling great in the moment.
And this is where experience and practice pays off, because Anish has played in the Tata Steel Over the Board tournament. He had a great showing, tying for first, ultimately losing in the Armageddon playoff to his compatriot Jordan van Forest. But he also then played in the Champions Chess Tour. He is fresh. He's ready to go. And now in this endgame, the king is better placed for black. I actually like black's position. And look at the clock, a minute 47 for Anish, just under a minute now for Nihal Sarin. And this is not easy draw despite the zeros on the evaluation bar. Rook e1, there could be a tactic with a rook takes e5, removing the defender, the bishop on c4. So there's a lot to figure out and not that much time to do so.
Does rook takes e5 work if black is able to include bishop takes b3? Obviously, it's a tactical idea, but in this moment, okay, well, it's off the table now. So we've got the trade on b3, and white's structure has improved a little bit. And now white also has the ability to pressure on the a file against the pawn on a7, although that's not the direction that Nihal went. He lifts the rook to e3. And now Nihal has the better pawn structure for the first time this game. He's got 2 pawn islands, and Anish has 3.
Yes, and well, this time situation is one where Anish is up half a minute, but Nihal Sarin's one of the best bullet players on the planet. So bullet play is under 1 minute, hyper bullet 30 seconds, and so Nihal Sarin, he's used to this. And look at these moves played very quickly. But knight c6, I think this might peter out. Earlier it didn't seem like a draw was likely. Now, if we get a trade of knights, it's a rook endgame. It shouldn't be advantageous for either side. Although with the time advantage, perhaps that could be in black's favor, but ultimately it looks like a position that should just be level.
It does feel like we're heading to a draw at this point. I'm curious, do you think that Nihal Sarin has an edge in bullet? I often think that junior players like Nihal Sarin, who have played a lot of bullet and he's really, really good, are kind of given this edge over players like Anish from pundits. And a lot of times I don't think that's true. All right, well, we get the draw.
We get the draw. So
neither player is testing it at this point.
No. So let's move on from Anish's game. We'll go to Sergei Ehrenberg playing, and it looks like he has a winning endgame at this point. This bishop, dark squares. Look at all these pawns. Thank you very much. I'm going to play Pac-Man on the king side. I'm going to take all your pawns.
You can even take those 2 queenside pawns off the board, and white still wins. Classic structure here where the bishop gets in. All the pawns are on the wrong color, and it is unfortunately a disaster for black. Of course, white was up a couple of pawns. White was playing, in a tough situation against a grandmaster outrated by hundreds and hundreds of points, not quite 1,000 points, but obviously Ehrenberg was a huge favorite. But this is still instructive to see that bishop go after those pawns.
For sure. And Ehrenberg, part of that PayPal Bulgaria team that we mentioned earlier, very strong lineup. Nice to get off to a good start. Of course, he has 800 rating points on his opponent, but when you are a bit rusty and you're a full-time employee at a job like he has, you want to just get back in rhythm. And that can be true no matter of your opponent. You are much more focused on the level of play that you're showing. And here he's winning this easily, h6. The knight will have to oh, look at that. That is fine technique. The knight wanted to come to g5 to stop the pawn before it got to a light square, and the bishop couldn't defend. So it plays f4 to take away the square. The best you can do now is give up your knight for the pawn, and well, this is an easy conversion at this point.
Fantastic grandmaster patience. With a player like Ehrenberg, I feel like he's a player who was ranked a bit more highly a while back, and now he's got this great career. He's representing his company in this event, and I think that there are a number of players in this event who might be stronger and more challenging opponents in this rapid format. I think we've seen this sometimes in the Pro Chess League or the US Chess League before that, where these players no longer have the time to study a lot of theory, but they still have these great instincts, and they might be 50 to 100 points off of their peak rating. But when it comes down to rapid, they just still have that tremendous talent and can really be, a challenge for Magnus Carlsen, Anish Giri. I think that we might see a player like Ehrenberg potentially score a point against one of these superstars in this event.
And Ehrenberg is a player who I have faced off against a number of times. He's very well respected. He's an extremely solid player, difficult to beat, and doesn't take unnecessary risks. So sometimes a player, will have an identical rating to another player, but their styles are just very wildly different, in fact. And Ehrenberg is known for his solid play, and that could be difficult for some of these top players because he will not just let you win. He's not going to do something just out of the blue to sacrifice a piece for no reason. No, he is going to say, if you are going to beat me, you're going to have to use every fiber of your being to do so.
Right. And that's obviously, as you say, very, very tough. And these top players, these 2,700 plus players may feel like they have to win, even though it's just going to be a very, very tough task. We may at some point see some players over pressing, trying to do that. It's often maybe not going to be just about the match circumstance. They may feel like their team can win the match, but they need to rack up as many match points as possible because that is a critical tiebreak and essential to getting into the finals on Sunday. And we have another interesting end game here. This is an example where the position looks, I think, to, maybe an amateur eye, like it almost might be a draw. White has an extra pawn, but everything looks blockaded, but it's light square bishop versus light square bishop, and black's pawns are on the light squares. Even if you take the pawn off of g3, eventually you're going to get Zugzwang, and you would win very, very instructively.
It's pretty amazing that this pawn on g3 is an extra pawn, but that's not the important part of the game. And it looks like I'm choosing a game that's not from this competition. There's so many games here. I was like, hey, let me just click this game that's here. But it's not part of the competition, but still a really fascinating one with Grandmaster Alex Delchev. And he's going to win this game with the king to e5. So my bad. I clicked on a game that's not part of this. So
I love it. You were like, there's a Grandmaster here versus a 2,100 rated opponent. This has got to be.
I'm just, clicking on things here. Here's Elvira Barron playing. I mean, I have a link to work with that should help everything out, but I'm just doing my best, everybody. I'm sorry. That didn't work. So yeah, we're gonna have to fix this. That's on my end now. I ruined everything. If our producer can help me out, that would be awesome. I ruined everything. So
I'm double checking this. I might be saying something that's wrong here as we're kind of figuring some of these things out, and I'll just take that heat if I'm wrong. But I think I saw that Carissa Yip is a reserve on a team. I'm curious about that. I'm trying to double check.
She's playing for American Express.
American Express. There we go. And the reason that I was thinking about that connection is because we were just looking at Grandmaster Ehrenberg's game, and I know that Carissa defeated Grandmaster Ehrenberg in her first win over a Grandmaster, which made a lot of press at the time, as it should have, in American circles. And in fact, she covered that game on Chess Kit. She did a video on it, and it was really very, very instructive. She won a beautiful game in the Dragon Sicilian against Grandmaster Ehrenberg.
So maybe we get a rematch. It was Ivanov, Grandmaster, I believe, was their first win.
Maybe
I could be wrong. But I think it was against Ivanov, if I'm remembering correctly.
I swear it was Carissa Yip versus Ehrenberg, but maybe it wasn't her first win. Maybe it was a different win, but I'm almost 100% certain that there is a video of her victory on Chess Kid. If not, people can castigate me. I'm cool. It's the internet. What is it here for if not for castigating people? So if I'm wrong, please do correct me.
Yes, my apologies, everybody, again, for my technological mishaps, but also we have board 4 for Optivert. We said she might be underrated, Lucrecia, and she's winning. She's completely winning. It's somebody whose rating here is a little bit higher than hers, at least on the Chess.com server, and she is about to deliver checkmate as in a queen and a rook ahead. And, well, this pawn can also just take and create a new queen. Instead, she takes towards the king, giving it a check, and I think this... Hopefully,
can we look at this game quickly, kind of from the beginning? Because I'm really curious about her skill level in representing Optivert, because she's the lowest rated player on Optivert, which is the team that Anish Giri is representing. But she's looking great in that final position. Obviously, she's winning. She seems to be playing much, much better than her kind of initial rating here. So
it's what you'll see right at the lower levels is just, newer players. Sometimes they put pieces in squares. They don't realize they're under attack. And it seems like she just took all the pieces that were given to her. I mean, just that's the way you want to go. And look at that. She found a knight retreat to work on the pin. And one very important, queen takes e4 would have dropped the checkmate. All right, you see that bar plummet. That would have been a blunder. And instead took with the knight on e4 at this point and then put all the pieces of safety, took everything that was offered. So can't complain about this if you're Anish and Team Optiver.
She's really maximizing in this game. There's the bishop that's hanging on c5, and she takes on d5 first. There's the knight that's hanging on b6, and she goes, I think she captured on e6 first or something. So she's taking everything that's on offer and then other things before she takes those things on offer. So she's definitely going to be a player that we're going to be watching closely in this event, because Optiver's a team that's really going to be contending to get into that final on Sunday. And her performance is really going to be very important. Of course, Anish Giri is a player whose games we're going to be watching closely. We love watching Anish play, but how she's able to perform might be the key to them getting through. And of course, we should give her credit. She's got to win, and Anish Giri does not. So we just got to make sure that we recognize that.
I was like, where are you going with this? And now I see what you did there. I see what you did. So it seems like board 4 leading this team, not board 1. So Nish,
absolutely
slacking off.
She should be team captain.
Yes. And checkmate in 2, queen b6. This is actually a very important position for those of you who are newer to chess. This king is trying to escape away here. So putting your queen on b6, it stops the king's escape. And the next move will be rook to d8. I think our temptation, Sam, is to, rook d7 is also a good move going for the eventual checkmate. But our temptation is to give checks rather than thinking about where that king will run to once we give the checks.
Absolutely. Something that I often explain to amateur students, to scholastic students that are starting out, is that checkmate is a check that you cannot escape. The hard part is the cannot escape part. The check part is the easy part. And the check part is the part that at the amateur level players focus on. And they just check, 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 check. And then you have queen versus king in the end game, and you actually never make progress. And it's a 50-move rule draw in scholastic competitions. The key is covering the escape squares. And of course, rook d7 did that very nicely. And of course, your move queen b6 was even more precise.
Yes, and the king walked towards the rook, and that's why checkmate was here. But if the king had gone to a7, there wouldn't be a checkmate just yet. Though still, rook d7, a very good move with purpose. The queen can just line up against his b7 pawn, and you can take advantage of a pin. Queen c6, as you can't take the queen. That pawn legally cannot move there. The next move will be queen takes pawn and checkmate.
Yes, very, very nice technique.
Okay, well, we do have, it seems that the first round here, the games have been finished. I just want to check on that. So I already clicked on games that may or may not have been part of this tournament. I actually was informed that it was part of the tournament. So I wasn't in the wrong. I'm just saying, I'm not going to blame anybody else, but it just wasn't completely my fault. Many things are, though.
I was sitting here and I was like, really? This event, this game, and this time control isn't part of the event? It feels like it should be. I was with you. I wanted to believe in you, but in either case, it was an interesting moment and a beautiful endgame. Really a beautiful same colored bishop endgame, and a nice technique there from Grandmaster Delchev.
Yeah, I should have trusted my first gut, and then I just got in my own head. But either way, we do have the results in the books, and we are going to take some time here to regroup. There are more rounds today, so you should know the schedule of this tournament. It's not just, oh, this match is done, there's no more chess. There's a lot of chess to be played. So we have a couple more rounds in these pools from the East. Then later, tonight, my time, I don't know where everyone else is watching from, but in the nighttime in New York and the evening time in the Pacific, there will be more chess to be played in the other pools. So a lot of chess left. We're going to sign off for now. But Sam, any last parting words before we get ready for the second round of matches?
Not really. I would just generally say that this is a lot of fun. It's chaotic. It's chaotic for the players. It's chaotic for us, but there are a lot of great games being played by great players. I would mention to everyone, it's impossible to watch all of these 10-2 games at the same time. Literally impossible. But if you want to make sure that you catch your favorite players and their games in this event, go check out chess.com/events. There is a page there for every single pool here. the 6 Eastern pools, A, B, C, D, E, and F, and the 2 pools, the Western pools that are be playing tonight. And you can search your favorite players, find their games, go through those. It'll be an easy way to keep tabs on all of the players playing in this event who you really want to follow.
For sure. And we will be back in about 30 minutes for the second round. We want to remind everyone one last time, well, not last time, we'll keep reminding you, but for now, that this is an event raising money for charity. Please do click the link on the panels there on Twitch. And if you can, of course, that we'd appreciate the generosity. But for now, we're going to sign off. We will be back in about a half hour getting ready for the second round of the FIDE Online Corporate Chess Championship.